All right, we're live, Bucky. Episode 11. Do the
We made
intro.
it. Thank you for being patient with me tonight, Dallas. I am at the People's Food Co-op, so it might have a little background noise. I apologize, but I'm doing it from my iPhone Google Hangout app, and we're going to make a go out of this. So thank you for joining us. Episode number 11. We are continuing conversations about digital CRE collision, where commercial real estate individual like myself, commercial real estate agent based out of Rochester, collides with Dallas McLaughlin, digital media, as I like to call expert. And I've been able to enjoy seeing your climb in your career, Dallas. So we'll get right into it. Today, I learned about a app called Bitly, or a website called Bitly. I serve on a non-profit here in Rochester, and they're using that tool to start tracking links when they put out PDFs that are within their website, or somehow people land on them through emails or whatever the case is, and then they can tell where people are engaging on their links. And it was like, the whole web thing, like the website specific, is not my world at this point. My world is content creation. So I wanted to ask you, Dallas, one, if you know of Bitly, and then two, how you're using Bitly, and some examples potentially too.
Yeah, so I've used Bitly a lot in the past. There's a lot of other versions out there. One of the original ones, probably 15 years ago, was Tiny URL. Actually made by a kid from Minnesota. It's great. And now Buffer, they have their own buffer.ly. So everybody's getting into that game. It's also actually really easy to buy your own. So for a while, when I had the clothing company, I had the numbers 507.mn, and I would use that to shorten all of my long, ugly URLs, as they're called. So the whole idea is when you start generating these long tracking URLs that have all these dynamic parameters on the end to tell you where this traffic came from, they become really long and really ugly, and they scare people. People don't want to click on them. So then you can drop them into these link shorteners like Bitly or Buffer, and they'll give you a nice, pretty, 10, 11, 12 character URL that you can share in places like Twitter, who also have character counts of their own. It's a little bit more appealing to the eye, so people aren't as scared to click on them. So yeah, they're super nice. They help you determine where that traffic came from, how many people came from that link. There's a lot of cool things you can do with them.
That's great. And the example that I used, as far as she is creating a PDF and then making it to where people can come to that PDF through the website, is there other examples where you see this being used, as far as what other things are people tracking related to URLs? So the PDF is the example I provide. Can you give some specific examples of how people are using it?
Yeah, so I use a lot of URLs tracking when I do the kind of social media content calendars for people. So for example, if I have a blog article on the client's website, I'll take the URL to that blog, and then Google provides a free link tracking tool. So you can put in source of traffic, so it'd be Facebook, for example, and you would put in the campaign name, so maybe it's the blog name, and you can maybe say like February 4th, which is the day you posted on Facebook. So you get this really long URL. So it's going to say blog name, Facebook, the whole deal. It's going to be super long. Then you can mini that down to just this tiny little Bitly, drop it into Facebook and share that. And then through Bitly, it's going to say your February 4th post on Facebook for this blog brought you this many people from these parts of the country at these hours of the day. They spent this much time on your website. They viewed this many pages. And then you can do the same link, but swap out Facebook for Twitter and Twitter for Instagram. So you can see how your different social media traffic behaves on that same piece of content. So it's really good to help qualify what that traffic is, where it's coming from.
That's awesome. And then I'm going to just keep going into what I learned today. I had the opportunity to see for the first time a heat map. And when I say a heat map, do you know exactly what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we use a lot of those. It freaks people
out. So go ahead and explain that, because this was my first time seeing that actually today.
So heat map it's kind of a broad way to look at it. So we do a lot of unique things here at the James Agency as far as kind of the old method of doing it was, let's put up 2 landing pages and let's just measure the conversions and see what happens, and then we'll choose a winner. The more modern, the more technologically advanced way is to put up a single landing page. I mean, we still split test stuff, but when we can't split test things, we'll put up a single page, and you can actually, on a heat map, see where people's cursors have moved on the page. I like to think of that kind of as a poor man's eye tracking, because if you think about how you use your cursor on the screen, your eye is typically on your cursor. So you can actually see how someone looks at your website. There's also heat mapping in terms of scroll depth. So bright red at the top, everybody sees that 100%. And it fades down to green at the very bottom as people start to drop off. So you can actually see if that call to action button is way down there below the fold, only 20% of your traffic's ever actually seeing it. So the wise thing would be
okay. So I'm gonna stop you, and I hate to interrupt because you're using things that I think, again, I've heard them, but it's never connected for me. And now today it did. Below the fold.
right.
Explain.
So that's actually that's a leftover term from kind of the print era. When you think of how newspapers are delivered, they were folded in half. So if you had a story, you wanted it above the fold. So on the newsstand, your story would be what everybody saw. Now, in modern terms of web design and landing page design, you want your most valuable information above the fold. The fold is now where your browser cuts off. So you don't want your really important stuff out of view. You want your contact information, your featured products, your social media. You want all that stuff above the fold where people can immediately see it. So heat mapping lets you find out that where you think people are going to click on stuff, they're actually not even getting there. So you move stuff around based on what it's telling you.
That's awesome. And one thing like we discovered is people were clicking on something that wasn't actually clickable.
Yeah. So then the next step of this is you can actually, and I still have all my old videos, you can actually record everybody's visit on your website. So you can see them in real time, their screen, obviously, not them. You can see their mouse move. You can see what they're clicking on. You can see if they start filling in form fields and where they decide, I'm done filling out this form. I give up and leave. So you can actually play back in real time people's visits to your website and make changes based on what you're seeing.
And so is that another, so we talk about Bitly as being a tool. Is there other tools for heat map tracking that's reasonable, that's out there? Is there, how do you get access to this?
Yeah, the one we most commonly use, we happen to have an enterprise account, which is more money, but if you're just the typical small business or just yourself, I use hotjar.com, just H-O-T, jar, Jar.com. It's like, I would say $10 a month. But if you're like selling any kind of product or if you're in any kind of lead generation business, you'll get more than $10 of value out of knowing what your traffic's actually doing when it gets to your website. So it's definitely a good investment.
All right. And then the next chart that she showed us when we were looking at this nonprofit, which it's the local YMCA. So props to the local YMCA and every YMCA for that matter. I think it's one of the longest lasting nonprofits in the United States, which is kind of a fun fact I heard. I hope I'm right there. If you think about it, YMCA has been around for a long time. So another thing we looked at is this, and I can't think of the term of this graph, but it was basically you could see how people were on one page and then either they dropped off or they went to another page and maybe they went to another page. It was kind of like the 2-tier step. What is that? What was that called?
Yeah, so that is what we call visitor flow.
Yes.
So basically, if you think of a tree, actually kind of this thing behind me, that's not what that is, but it looks kind of like that. You would say, if I can point at this is where the user entered the website. Then they went over here to this page. And I guess in this example, they would have left right there. So then this other visitor came in, he went to this page, and 25% of them went down here, and 75% went over here. But you can basically see how your traffic flows through your website. You can see where people are deciding to leave Or for example, if you have 8 navigation items across the top, you can see in what order they actually view those in. Typically, you'll organize your navigation most important on the left of your website, the least important on the far right. But what you actually find out through these reports is maybe your 4th or 5th item is actually what leads to the most conversions. So you want to move those further to the left. So it's just a constantly evolving process. And it's no longer just build your website and just let it go. You got to keep working on it and paying attention to it.
That's so interesting. As a small business, so this YMCA, for example, it's a small YMCA. It's Rochester only. So we hire a company that ends up providing those services, if you will, those graphs and things like that. But I think so often, and this is just so common, we don't actually get to know what they mean. Like, you know, we'll look at them, we'll pay the, let's say it's $100 a month, I don't know the number, to have this available to us because they're reselling it and they're using something, but we don't actually get to know it. And the tools are out there. And so, you know, it's, what do you say to that as far as the people that don't actually get to know it? What are you missing? I think some of that might be an obvious answer. And what's the best way to really start?
I would say if you're in any kind of business that takes money through that website, whether it is direct conversions or just leads like gym memberships or something, you're leaving money on the table by ignoring this is what's really happening. But at the same time, what I always say is, if you own the business and you're running the business, or maybe you're the hiring manager or you're HR, and for some reason they're handing you these reports, it's not your fault that you don't understand this. That's not for you. You shouldn't. What I would say is find somebody who does, and can not only, I would say it's 20% of the job for whoever's providing that report to give it to you and let you see it. That typically does nothing for anybody. The other 80% of that person's job is, but tell me what to do with this. And I think that's why agencies are really beneficial, is because for example, when I send monthly reports, I'll send you all the data in attachments in an email. And I'll say, you know what, there's all the data. If you want to look at it, there it is. Here's what it's telling you. Here's what I recommend that you do based on this. And swear to God, 90% of the time, clients don't even open those attachments. They just say, sure, go ahead. If that's the number safe, do it. And I say, all right, great. And that's just part of that relationship.
That's interesting. Another thing we talked about is, she said, how do I get my team members? And this is what I'm learning to know and get better at, and it's one of my strengths, is she goes, how do I get my team members to be willing to be in front of the camera so I can produce more content? Because I can see her locally pushing out on Instagram and things like that. And I said, I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable, but this is how. And I pulled out of my bag something new that I started carrying around as of this week, a full-blown camera. And I set it up on the desk we're at, and I said, this is how you set your camera up. And in your example, you don't have a camera, so you set your phone up and you say, look, I need help. My job is to share the story of the Y, share about the great people of the Y, share about the great talents and passions that you have at the Y. And so I'm going to shoot a video, and I'm going to ask you 2 simple questions. What's your favorite piece of equipment, and why is that your favorite piece of equipment to work out on? And I will let you review what I shoot at the end before I push it out live. I can't promise you I'm even going to push this out there to the people, because I am just building up my database of content, but I, as the person that's responsible for producing content, need your help. And I just basically said, you gotta kind of force feed it. And it's not comfortable even for you as the person creating the content to pull something like this out of your bag. And I said, look, when I showed you this camera and set it up and said, all right, it's recording, which then I recorded the rest of our conversation, I said, it doesn't feel comfortable. We're just not used to that. We feel like potential that someone's watching. Whether I actually share that whole long video on YouTube or not, but we as the person that's responsible for marketing the small business, for increasing sales, for essentially building content for our website, so then we can have actually things to track and we can increase the amount of viewership and the time that someone spends on our website. We have to kind of force feed other individuals to help us with producing that content. So that was another fun conversation we had, and it was neat how we talked about the websites, and you even elaborated on it more here, because it helps me understand, okay, I'm getting only one piece to the puzzle figured out here over the last year, the producing of the content, but there's so many pieces to the puzzle I don't have figured out. Analytics related to the content, but even going further, the website and what analytics are available on the website.
Yeah. I mean, the job, what I always say to people, kind of my little tagline is, the click is a lie. Just because you got somebody to click on your ad, it doesn't mean anything. That's the easy part. The hard part then is to get people to, when they get to your website, to make them understand who you are as a person or a brand or a business, and to get them to not only believe that, but actually invest in you, whether it's buy your product or sign up for your newsletter or read your blogs or follow you on social media. And that's where it gets hard. I can make somebody click on anything. The rest comes into play through the science of human behavior and what happens on that website and what relationships built there. And that's where it gets real fun too.
That's awesome. I know your time is short here today, so I just have one more topic I want to cover, and then we will go off on our way when you tromp through the sand. My next topic, I would say, and this is, small business. I've actually now worked with 3 website companies locally, and I'm extremely impressed, and I've spent a lot of money, I feel like, for our market. And so what are some things that a small business really needs to be looking for when they look at, building a website? What questions should they be asking? If it's not an agency, what type of questions should they be asking? Or, geez, how do you not get in the position where you feel like you're flushing money down the toilet?
One of the things that we get asked a lot is that when the website's done and the agency hands it to the client, can I, as the client, go in and make simple updates to it, or am I handcuffed to you, the web designer, forever? Because that's what happens a lot. Someone will build this overly complicated website, and then nobody else can ever figure out how to work on it except for that person. So I would always make sure that you know what kind of platform it's going to be built on. So whether that's WordPress or Joomla or even Wix or Squarespace or something, all these things that are out there now. So know what it's going to be built on. It absolutely has to be mobile responsive. That's not an option anymore. And make sure that you have full login credentials to it, and you can go in and make edits as you need to. It's so easy today with zero coding experience at all to be able to go to a website and just right on the front end of the website, like as a consumer would see it, just click and move things around and change text. It's so easy for developers to build their websites like that now. Just a lot of them aren't transparent enough to do that, I would say, or just maybe don't want to take that extra step.
So my experience has been here recently. We had a website built, very, very in love with the design, very in love with a lot of the functionalities. But then when we were given the ability to edit, but then the ability to edit, there's kind of like, with every action, a reaction occurs on the back end of the website, which directly affects the website itself. So now we're afraid to even make changes. So it's like, we want to do some simple things. And so it's built on WordPress, which I think is, a hot thing to be built on. People have heard that for a long time now. Is there a reason in your mind of why, there's that reaction, or is that how all the backends work, or should we not have access to maybe all these things that were given? Was it built on a very complicated WordPress background? I know you've never seen it, but what's some of the thoughts that go through your mind?
Well, kind of coming a little bit from that world is, I can see it from both perspectives. I can see that the web designer potentially built it to spec and with your best goals in mind and delivered that. And I don't know, how old's the website? How old is it?
I think we're a year and a half in.
So that's still relatively newish. But a lot of times what happens with WordPress is they'll push out updates that just happen automatically. And if it's like a custom built website, they might no longer understand an older piece of code. And that just kind of eats away the website. Or plugins go out of date. They need to constantly be maintained. So there is maintenance. It's almost like how I was saying, you need to constantly evolve the front end of your website. The back end of your website also needs to constantly stay up to date. But having said that, there's also cases where, I think the cost of entry to becoming a web designer or developer is really low right now. And there's potentially a high upside. So there's a lot of people getting into it and a lot of people making a lot of sales, but they just don't quite have the skill level to be doing that yet. So you kind of need to have a body of work. It's almost like you kind of actually do need some experience, because you need to not just know how to do it, you need to know why things happen the way they happen to kind of deflect against these potential problems in the future.
And one thing I would say is don't lead your decision when you're looking to build a website by design. I think people that don't understand the back end so often rate the design extremely high related to how they, ooh, their websites look good. Ooh, this person's website that they made. Don't rate it by design, because that's two different talents. That is two different people, really. And if someone's telling you that they're doing the design and the back end, my eyebrows would raise. I would be like, show me more. And I think one thing I wish I would have done more is, all right, show me some websites you built and the back end, and let's go and dive in. Like, show me what you can do.
Yeah. So here at the agency, our designers design and our developers develop. That's just the way it works. So the designers will meet with the client and get the whole creative process of how should it look, how should it feel, colors, all those things. And they'll design it, they'll get it approved, and then they'll hand it off to the developer and say, okay, now build this. So the developer can just focus on the real nerd core stuff, make it work, and not have to think about, well, should the button be rounded or should it be square, or all these things they don't want to think about. And then at the end of that, like you were saying, show us, how it works. We typically will then give our clients a video series. Okay, you want to make a new post? Here's a screen capture of our actual web developer, the person who built this website, walking you through on your website how to make a new post. Because for a while you have to like Google, how do I post on WordPress? And it was like some other website is out of date. So we actually do it on your website. So there's a lot of things you can ask for, and you need to ask for those things.
Interesting. And I think another thing is we don't have agencies per se, a lot of them. I think of maybe 1, 2 in our market. And I think kind of the direction you're seeing things head is that agency model is maybe a model to look at if it is in your market, or even look outside your market, because now with the web, you don't have to, as much as I want to do business local, your decisions all based on the talent that's within your community. And again, maybe collaborating with the talent. So if you find a great designer locally, seeing if you can collaborate with an agency potentially that would be willing to work with that designer. Does that ever happen in your agency world?
Yeah, we actually have a pretty large project going on right now where a client came to us and they said, hey, we already have a great relationship with these developers. We've done a lot of projects with them. They're going to develop the website, but we want you to design it. And so we actually won that pitch. So we won the design process. And then they started making the connection between us and the developers. So now we meet with the developers and we just work very close with this other company. We could have taken that business on, but because they already had that relationship, we honored that. And now we're working together, and it's a good experience.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dallas. I learned a lot today, and this is going to be, I think, more of the direction that this show continues to head as far as what I'm learning and me asking you questions, because I haven't been doing that as much as I need to, and I have a lot to learn from your world and apply to the CRE industry. So thank you for joining on episode number 11. Thank you for listening. I am going to ask that we remember, Dallas, you remind me to put in the comments those links, those tools that you referred to, and we look forward to episode number 12.
Excellent. Good talking to you, Bucky. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll be up on iTunes and Stitcher and Google Play, everything real soon. Thank you.
See you, Dallas.